Relations and Rollups are one of Notion's most powerful features, allowing you to connect one database to another and to retrieve information from these connected databases. Yet these features are one of the least understood features that Notion has to offer. So in today's video, I really want to help you understand what Relations and Rollups are and to show you how it works using a practical example. Hi, my name is Karina and I'm a full-time Notion creator and consultant. I personally use Relations and Rollups for anything that I build in Notion, whether that's to help me manage my business or my personal life, and I also use it when building a custom template for a customer or when building a template for general sale. And the reason for that is because I store all of my information, my knowledge, my customer resources in databases. Databases allow you to store and organize data for specific categories of information. A mistake that many people make is to try and capture as much information as possible in a single database, usually crossing categories of information, which then makes it really difficult to visualize the data, retrieve the data, and keep the data up to date. So my recommendation and an organizational best practice is to create separate databases for different categories of information with related properties. Think of databases as a digital filing system that would work in the same way that a physical filing system would work. Let's use a very practical example and think of a cutlery tray. So you will have a drawer where you keep all of your cutlery, but inside that drawer you do have a cutlery tray where you can separate your forks from your knives and your spoons. So in the digital world, for your digital information, you would want to create that same level of separation and have a database for goals, a database for tasks, a database for projects, and so on. So if you store all of your digital information in separate databases, it's absolutely crucial that you're able to connect these databases to retrieve related information. And this is where the relation in Rollups comes to play. So let's dive into our example for today and let's build a project and tasks tracker in Notion. So we're now in Notion and I have created a page called Projects and Tasks. And the first thing we will want to do is to create a projects database. We can do so by clicking /, typing database, and selecting the first option, which is database inline, which creates a simple table view. I'm going to title my database Projects YouTube to make it easier to find later on. And we're going to start configuring our properties inside our projects database. First property is our name. So project name. And then I'm going to delete the tags property that is always created by default. Instead, what I would like to track for my projects is the timeline. So it's a date type property that I will need, that I'm going to name it timeline. So we can track the start and the end date for the project. Next, I will want to track the owner of the project. So I want a people type property or a person type property, which I'm going to call owner. Next, I would like to have a status property so I can track the status of the project. So I am going to select a status property and I'm going to do some minor configurations, just changing a little bit the colors of the different options just to match my preferences. And that is about it. That's all I would need to know at a project level. I want my timeline for the project, the owner of the project, and the status of the project. Now, projects are normally broken down into smaller parts, which are our tasks. And as we discussed earlier, we should create a separate database for tasks because this is a separate category of information with a completely different set of properties. So what we will do next is to create a tasks database, and we'll do it right underneath our projects database. So repeat the same process, / database inline, and let's name our table tasks YouTube. Again, I'm only calling it YouTube because I have several projects and tasks databases within my workspace. So giving it the YouTube name will make it easier to find when we're applying the relations and rollups later on. So my first property is going to be the task name. I'm also going to delete the default tags property, and instead I would like to also create a deadline for each task. So I want a date type property that I'm going to call deadline. I would also like to have an owner for each task. So I will select the person type property again and call it owner. And more importantly, I want to track the completion status of my task. So I would like to select a checkbox type property. I'm going to call it done, so that when the task is completed, it's as simple as checking the box to mark it as done. In addition to that, there's a few more properties that I normally like to track. These are date started, date finished, and number of hours. I like to track the number of hours that it takes to complete a task, so it can then roll up into the project and I can see how long the project took to complete overall. And you will see all of this making sense in just a minute. So let's go ahead and add these additional properties. So I want my date started and I want to create a date finished. Lastly, I'm going to add a simple property, a number type property, and I'm going to call it number of hours. This is nothing fancy. There's no fancy time tracking system here. We're just going to manually input the number of hours it took to complete this task. So what I need to do next is to populate these two databases with some sample projects and some sample tasks before we head on to applying a relation and a rollup to these databases. And there we go. Now we have some sample data in both our projects and our tasks database. And what we are left to do now is to connect these two databases through a relation. So a relation is a type of property within a Notion database that basically allows you to connect pages in one database to the pages in another database. It can also be used to connect items within the same database, but we'll cover that in another video. So let's build our relation within our project's database so we can select the tasks that are associated with that project. And we'll do so by selecting a relation type property. You're now prompted to select the database that you want to connect to the project's database. So we have here our tasks YouTube, and that's the database we want to connect with. What you will need to configure next is, number one, the limit of entries. So do you want one project to one task? That's not the case. We're going to have multiple tasks associated with our projects, so we're going to leave it as no limit. And then you can decide whether or not you want to show this relation on the tasks database as well. So in this case, we definitely want to see the project to which the task corresponds to in the tasks database. You might choose to call it something different. You might call it just projects in the tasks database. And in the projects database, I want to call it simply tasks. And it's really handy of Notion to include a little visual, a little preview down below that shows you these relationships. So it shows you that the projects database is connected to the tasks database, and we've called this property tasks, whereas the tasks database is connected to the projects database and the relation property is called projects. And that's it. We just click add relation and we now have our projects and our tasks database connected to each other. What we need to do now is to select the tasks that are associated with each of our projects. So I'm going to select task 1, for example, task number 2, and task number 3. And this is what it looks like. You just see all the tasks that are associated with your project. If we look down below in our tasks database, we can see that the projects property has been created and the projects that the task is associated with is also reflected in here. So I'm going to continue and do the same for project number 2 and project number 3. And there we go. Now we have all of our tasks associated with a project. This is very helpful, but it's not the most important thing that we would want to achieve by connecting our tasks to our projects. What's most important for us to actually track the progress that is being made with our project by assessing how many of our tasks have been completed. And in order to do that, we'll need to create a roll-up. So a roll-up is also a type of property within a Notion database, which allows you to retrieve items from a related database with the ability to make calculations for the retrieved information. So a roll-up can only really be used in conjunction with a relation property and never as a standalone. So let's create our Rollup property within our projects database so that we can retrieve the done property within the tasks database and make a calculation to understand how much progress we've made with our project number one. So we'll create a new property, which is a Rollup type property. And we're going to select the relation that this rollup relates to. In our case, we have only created one relation, which is to the tasks database. Next, you will select the property that you want to retrieve. So in our case, we want to retrieve the done property. As you can see, it's already been populated in our tasks database, but this view showing us the original content is not very helpful. What would be far more helpful is to show the percentage of checked boxes so we can actually calculate the progress that has been made for this project. So we select percentage checked and we're now able to see the status of each project or how much progress has been made for each project based on how many tasks have been completed. So I'm just going to rename this property progress. And you can also select how this number shows. If you just want a percentage number, you select number, but you can also have a bar, a progress bar view, or a rank progress donut. You can also configure the color of your progress ring or progress bar to make it look more aesthetic for your Notion workspace. And that is it. This is what a rollup looks like. You can have as many rollups as you want for the related databases. Another rollup that I would like to create in this case is in relation to the number of hours it took to complete our tasks, so we know how many hours it took in total to complete each project. So we would just go ahead and repeat the process, create another rollup type property. In this case, I'm going to call it total number of hours, and the relation is in connection with tasks, and the property that I want to retrieve is the number of hours. Similarly to what we've done before, I don't want to just see the original number for each task, but rather I would like to see the sum of all the tasks and all the hours that it took to complete. And there we go. Now we know how many hours I have spent on each project as a roll-up of the time that I spent on each task. You can relate as many databases as you would like to build even more complex systems in Notion. For example, if you're building a CRM system, you could use Relations and Rollups to connect your accounts database to your opportunities database, as well as your meetings and contacts databases. There are many practical applications of the Relations and Rollups, and some of the most common examples include objectives and key results, areas and resources, clients and invoices, and so on. I hope you found this video helpful and that it really helped you nail down your understanding of Relations and Rollups. And if so, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and I hope to see you in the next one.